He married a girl who never spoke. On their wedding night, she finally whispered his brother's name. The first time Ethan saw her, she was sitting alone on a park bench, pale sunlight falling softly across her face. Her name was Clara, a quiet girl who never spoke to anyone. Not because she was rude, but because she simply couldn't. People said she hadn't spoken a single word since childhood. Yet, there was something hauntingly peaceful about her silence, something that drew Ethan closer every time he passed that bench. He began leaving small notes beside her. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Or, "You look like you carry the whole sky in your eyes." She never replied with words, only soft smiles and little nods. And somehow that was enough. Ethan didn't know why her silence fascinated him. Maybe it was because she listened when no one else did. Maybe it was because he saw sadness behind her calm eyes. But one thing was certain. Her silence spoke louder than any words ever could, and in that silence Ethan began to fall in love, not realizing that some silences hide stories far too dark to be broken. Ethan never believed in fate until Clara entered his life. She didn't speak, yet somehow her silence made him listen more deeply than any words ever could. Weeks turned into months, and every day he would find himself walking to that same park, bringing her coffee, books, and little letters folded into paper hearts. She would smile softly, her eyes lighting up for a brief moment, and that was all the answer he ever needed. Over time, their connection became something beyond language. They spoke through gestures. Her soft nod when he asked if she liked the rain. Her slight smile when he told her she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Sometimes she would write short notes on napkins. "Thank you. It's peaceful here. You're kind." That was the most he ever got. But it was enough to build a world around her silence. Ethan's friends didn't understand. "You're falling for a mystery," they laughed. But Ethan didn't care. He saw something in Clara that no one else did. A quiet strength, a sadness wrapped in grace. There was something about the way she watched the world, as if she'd seen it all before and was too tired to explain. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan brought her to a small lakeside dock, where the water shimmered with dying light. He had rehearsed 100 speeches in his mind, but when he saw her standing there, barefoot, her hair dancing in the wind, every word vanished. He knelt down, holding out a small ring box, his voice trembling. "Clara," he whispered, "you don't have to say anything. You never have. I want to be the one who understands your silence for the rest of my life." She froze, her eyes wide, her lips trembling as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. For a moment, he thought she'd run, but instead, she took the ring, pressed it to her heart, and nodded, tears falling silently down her cheeks. It was the most beautiful yes he had ever seen. Later that night, when he dropped her home, he caught something strange in her expression, fear, as if saying yes had woken something she'd buried deep. Her hands shook slightly when he held them, and for the first time she pulled away quickly before walking inside. Ethan brushed it off his nerves, but as he drove away, he saw her standing by the window, staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite name, half love, half sorrow. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He thought about how she never talked about her past. No family, no photos, no stories. Nothing. Just a quiet house, an empty phone, and that haunting silence. He told himself it didn't matter. Love didn't need answers. Only trust. But deep down, something in him whispered otherwise. Something about Clara's silence didn't just hide pain. It hid truth, and soon he would learn that her silence wasn't about what she couldn't say. It was about what she dared not say. Ethan always thought love could fix anything, that patience and kindness could fill the gaps that silence left behind. But the night after his proposal, something inside Clara shifted. She didn't come to the park for 3 days. No notes, no quiet smiles, nothing, just absence, the kind that hums in your chest like a warning. When she finally did appear, she looked different, pale, exhausted, eyes wide with something close to panic. Ethan ran up to her, relieved, but she flinched at his touch. Her hands were cold, trembling, and when he asked what was wrong, she simply shook her head and pulled a small piece of paper from her pocket. It read, "He knows." Ethan frowned. Who knows what? She didn't answer. Instead, she tore the paper to shreds, her eyes darting around the park as if expecting someone to step out of the shadows. That was the first time Ethan noticed the man, standing across the street wearing a long coat, his face hidden beneath the brim of a hat. He wasn't looking at Ethan. He was watching her. Ethan turned to confront him, but by the time he looked back, the man was gone, melted into the crowd like a ghost. That night, Clara refused to let him drive her home. She walked away quickly, her figure swallowed by fog and streetlights. Ethan followed at a distance, worried, until she reached her house, a small, isolated place at the edge of town. He waited in his car until her lights came on, but before he drove away, he noticed something chilling. Her curtains shifted, and in the reflection of the glass, he saw another silhouette inside, taller still, watching her from behind. The next morning, Ethan went back to her house. The door was slightly open. He stepped inside, calling her name, but the air felt wrong, too quiet, too heavy. On the coffee table sat a half-burned photograph. He picked it up carefully, brushing away ash. It showed a young Clara standing beside another man who looked hauntingly familiar. It was his brother, Daniel. Ethan's mind froze. He hadn't spoken to Daniel in over 3 years, not since their fight over a business that went wrong. Or so he thought. Daniel had left town suddenly. No calls, no explanations, and now there he was, smiling beside the woman Ethan was about to marry. Ethan stumbled back, his pulse racing. This can't be real! Just then, a floorboard creaked upstairs. He looked up, his voice trembling. Clara? No answer, only silence. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. At the top, he found her sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at the same photograph he held. Her eyes were red from crying, and before he could say a word, she dropped the picture frame. Glass shattering across the floor. Ethan crouched beside her. Clara, why was Daniel with you? Why didn't you tell me? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Tears streamed down her face. She grabbed a pen from the nightstand and scribbled a single line on the back of a torn envelope. He's the reason I stopped speaking. Ethan's breath caught. What do you mean? She shook her head violently, covering her mouth with her trembling hand. He tried to reach for her, but she pulled away again, just like the night she said yes. Then she did something that chilled him to his core. She pointed to her throat and drew a small line across it with her finger, eyes wide with terror. Ethan's voice cracked. Clara, what happened? She grabbed another piece of paper, writing furiously this time, her handwriting jagged, uneven. He promised he'd come back, but if he found me with someone else, he said he'd finish what he started. Ethan's hands went cold. Daniel? My brother? You can't mean. Clara looked at him with eyes full of broken memories, and for the first time, Ethan realized her silence wasn't a mystery. It was a scar. She wasn't mute by birth, she was silent by fear. That night, Ethan stayed by her side until she fell asleep. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, carrying the distant sound of a car slowing down near her driveway. He peeked through the curtain and saw headlights lingering just long enough for him to make out a familiar license plate. Daniel's. Ethan's heart pounded as he whispered to himself, what the hell are you doing here, Daniel? Clara stirred in her sleep, whispering something barely audible, a single name. Trembling, broken, Daniel. And for the first time, Ethan didn't know who to pity, the woman who couldn't speak, or the man who was about to hear what she finally had to say. The next morning, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something inside Clara's house still watched him. Every shadow, every creak of wood made his heart jump. He stayed by her side until dawn, but she didn't speak, didn't write, didn't move, just stared out the window as the sun slowly bled into the sky. When Ethan finally left to get some air, he found tire marks outside her driveway, deep, fresh, and leading toward town. His gut twisted. He knew that car. Daniel's. By the time Ethan reached his office downtown, Daniel was already there, sitting in his chair, feet on his desk, grinning like he'd never disappeared. The years hadn't changed him much. Same sharp suit, same easy confidence, but there was something new in his eyes. Something cold. Ethan froze in the doorway. You're supposed to be gone. Daniel stood slowly, straightening his tie. Miss me, little brother? What the hell are you doing here? Daniel smirked. You're marrying her, aren't you? Ethan's chest tightened. Stay away from Clara. Daniel laughed, a quiet, humorless sound. Oh, Ethan, you really don't know, do you? Ethan stepped closer, fury rising in his throat. What did you do to her? For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he leaned against the desk, voice calm, almost casual. You mean what we did? Ethan blinked. What are you talking about? Daniel's expression darkened. That night, the fire. You don't remember because you weren't supposed to. Ethan's heart began to pound. What fire? Daniel walked slowly around him, his words like poison. 3 years ago, the night before I left, you were drunk. We both were. You found out about Clara, about what she'd seen me do. You said she needed to forget. You tried to help, but things went wrong. The candle, the broken glass, the blood. He paused, whispering close to Ethan's ear. You left her there, Ethan. You left her in that burning room. Ethan spun around, his face pale. You're lying. Daniel smiled sadly. Am I? For a second, Ethan couldn't breathe. Memories flickered. The smell of smoke, a scream, his brother's hand dragging him through darkness. He'd buried that night so deep, he'd convinced himself it never happened. But if Daniel was telling the truth, he stumbled back, whispering, no, she would have told me. Daniel's grin widened. She can't. Ethan's fists clenched. Why are you back now? Daniel's eyes flicked toward the window, where the reflection of a wedding invitation gleamed faintly on Ethan's desk. Because she belongs to me, he said softly, and I came to take her home. Ethan lunged at him, rage exploding. The two brothers crashed into the desk, papers flying. Daniel didn't fight back. He just laughed, his voice echoing like static. "You think love will save her? You think you can erase what you did?" Ethan shouted. "Get out!" Daniel straightened his jacket, calm as ever. "You can try to protect her, Ethan, but the truth has a way of speaking, even through silence." He walked to the door, pausing only once. "I'll see you both soon. Congratulations, by the way, on marrying my ghost." When he was gone, Ethan sank to the floor, shaking. His reflection in the office glass looked like a stranger, eyes wide, skin pale. He didn't know what was true anymore. That night, he drove straight to Clara's house. Her lights were off. The front door hung open. On the table was a single note written in her trembling hand. "He found me." And beneath it, a photograph, the same wedding dress she'd chosen, now lying crumpled on the floor. Outside, thunder rumbled again. A shadow moved near the tree line, and Ethan heard a whisper carried on the wind. Deep, familiar, and cold. "She was never yours to begin with." Ethan turned toward the sound, but there was no one there, only the echo of Daniel's laughter fading into the night. And somewhere in the darkness, Clara's voice, soft, broken, and barely a whisper, called out for the first time in years. "Ethan." Then silence. Rain poured over the town like the sky itself was grieving. Ethan hadn't slept in 2 nights. Clara was gone, her phone dead, her house empty, her wedding dress left behind like a ghost of what could have been. Every lead turned cold. Every street felt like a maze leading him nowhere, except back to the one place he feared most, the ruins of the old house by the lake. That was where it all began. The place Daniel had burned down 3 years ago. The place Clara stopped speaking. When Ethan reached it, lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the charred remains. The smell of wet ash and mold clung to the air. He pushed through the rotted doorframe, flashlight trembling in his hand. "Clara!" His voice echoed against blackened walls. No answer, only the faint dripping of water and the creak of broken wood. Then he saw it, a trail of muddy footprints leading upstairs. He followed, every step heavy, his heart thudding louder than the rain. The footprints ended at a half-open door. Inside, candlelight flickered weakly, and there she was, Clara, sitting in the middle of the burnt room, wearing her white wedding dress, soaked and torn. Her hair clung to her face, eyes hollow, lips trembling. "Clara!" Ethan ran to her, kneeling beside her. "What are you doing here?" She didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the corner of the room, the same corner where the fire had started. Her voice came out as a whisper, her first real words in years. "He's here." Ethan froze. "Who?" Before she could answer, thunder rolled outside, shaking the house. A shadow moved in the hallway. Ethan turned toward it, flashlight trembling, and for a split second he saw him, Daniel, standing in the doorway, soaked to the bone, smiling like death itself. "Still trying to save her, brother?" Ethan stood up, voice breaking. "Stay away from her, Daniel." Daniel took a slow step forward, the floor creaking under his boots. "I told you she belongs to me. You just borrowed her silence." Clara began to shake, whispering, "Please, don't make me remember." Daniel's expression softened, almost tender. "You already do." He tossed something onto the floor, a charred locket. Ethan picked it up. Inside was a photo. Clara, younger, laughing, and Daniel's arm around her. But behind them, half-burned, was another face. Ethan's. Clara sobbed. "You both were there that night." Ethan stared at the picture, confusion turning into horror. "What are you saying?" Daniel smirked. "You think you were the hero. You started the fire, Ethan. You tried to destroy the proof, the truth about what happened to her." Ethan shook his head. "No, that's not true." Clara's voice trembled. "You both fought. I tried to stop you. And then," she broke down, clutching her throat. "The glass, the fire, I couldn't scream." The room went dead silent except for the rain hitting the roof. Ethan's flashlight flickered, then went out. In the darkness, Daniel's voice echoed. "Tomorrow you marry her in white, but tonight you'll remember everything you buried." The candle went out, and the room plunged into darkness. Ethan reached for Clara, but she was gone. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, fast, desperate. He chased after her, calling her name, but when he reached the front door, there was only the rain, and Daniel's voice whispering from the shadows, closer than before. "You can't save her from what you did." Lightning flashed again, and Ethan saw something written on the wet ground, traced with shaking hands. "Stop the wedding." And below it, a single drop of blood. Ethan fell to his knees, whispering into the storm, "Clara, what are you running from, or who?" The only reply was the echo of her voice, faint, broken, carried by the wind. "Both of you." The morning of the wedding dawned gray and heavy, as if the sun itself refused to rise. The church bells tolled faintly in the distance, but the sound felt wrong, dull, mournful, like a funeral instead of a celebration. Ethan stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie with trembling hands. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale. He hadn't seen Clara since the night at the lake house, but her message, "Stop the wedding," burned in his mind like a wound he couldn't close. He wanted to believe she was just scared, that Daniel's presence had twisted her memories. But deep down, a part of him knew there was more, something darker, something buried beneath the ashes of that night. The church was filled with guests who whispered behind their programs. Everyone sensed it, the tension, the chill, the wrongness in the air. Clara hadn't arrived yet. The organist waited for a cue that never came. Ethan's mother tried to smile, but even she looked uneasy. Then, just before noon, the heavy wooden doors creaked open. Clara stepped inside. She was pale, almost ghostly, her dress damp at the hem, as if she had walked through rain. Every step echoed in the silent church. Her eyes didn't meet anyone's, not even Ethan's. She looked straight ahead, her expression blank, her lips sealed in the same silence that had always surrounded her. Ethan's chest tightened. Something's wrong. When she reached the altar, the priest began to speak, his voice trembling slightly. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." But before he could continue, Clara lifted her hand. The priest fell silent. Slowly, she turned toward Ethan. Her eyes shimmered with tears and fear. She reached into her veil and pulled out something small, a folded piece of paper. She handed it to him with trembling fingers. Ethan opened it. Inside, written in shaky handwriting, were just 4 words. "He's here, behind you." The room fell silent. Ethan turned slowly, his heart pounding in his throat. At the back of the church stood Daniel, wearing a dark suit, perfectly pressed, his smile polite and cold. No one else seemed to notice him. He just stood there, hands clasped, like a proud brother attending the ceremony. Ethan whispered, "Daniel, stop this." But Daniel didn't move. He just tilted his head, eyes glinting. "Go on," he mouthed. "Say I do." Ethan's palms began to sweat. He tried to speak, but his throat closed. Clara backed away slightly, her breathing uneven. The priest, confused, asked softly, "Is everything all right?" Daniel stepped forward, his footsteps echoing through his reflection never appeared in the church's marble floor. Clara whimpered, clutching her throat, as if trying to hold in a scream that wanted to tear its way out. Then Daniel's voice filled Ethan's mind, not out loud, but inside him. "You killed her, Ethan. You killed her long before I did." Ethan clutched his head, stumbling back. "No, I didn't." Clara's bouquet fell from her hands. Flowers scattered across the floor, their petals darkening as if soaking up invisible blood. Ethan shouted, "Daniel, stop this!" But Daniel was gone. The back doors of the church swung open violently, slamming against the walls. Wind rushed in, extinguishing every candle. Guests screamed. The priest stumbled back, and in that chaos, Clara fell to her knees. Her veil tore away, revealing a scar on her throat Ethan had never seen before. Thin, white, jagged. She looked up at him through tears. "He didn't lie," she whispered hoarsely. "You were there too." The words hit Ethan harder than any punch. "Clara, please." She shook her head. "You both promised I'd forget, but you made me remember." Ethan's vision blurred. He stepped closer, desperate to hold her, but she backed away, trembling. "Don't touch me." The church doors slammed shut again, trapping everyone inside. The candles reignited, but their flames burned blue. And in that eerie light, Daniel's shadow appeared on the wall, even though he wasn't there. His voice filled the air once more. "Till death do you part, brother." The glass windows shattered, raining shards across the pews. Guests screamed and ran for the exits, but the doors wouldn't open. Ethan dropped to his knees beside Clara, clutching her hand as she sobbed uncontrollably. Then through the chaos, she whispered one last thing, so soft, only he could hear it. "If you love me, Ethan, don't let him take me again." The blue flames flared brighter. Ethan pulled her close, tears streaming down his face. "I won't, I swear I won't." And then everything went dark. When the light returned, the church was empty. The guests were gone, the doors were open, and Ethan stood alone at the altar, holding Clara's wedding veil in his trembling hands. Her voice echoed faintly through the hollow room, soft, distant, fading. "You were supposed to stop the wedding." When the police arrived, the church looked like it had been frozen in a nightmare. Candles burned down to wax puddles. The windows shattered inward. The pews were splintered as if something had torn through them. But there was no sign of the wedding guests, not one. Only Ethan stood at the altar, drenched in sweat, gripping Clara's torn veil like a lifeline. He couldn't speak, couldn't explain what happened. His lips trembled as the officers questioned him, but every word felt like it would choke him. "Where is everyone?" they asked. "Where's the bride?" He just stared blankly at the veil and whispered, "She was right here." Paramedics led him outside. The rain had stopped, but the sky still hung dark and heavy. The news spread quickly. Bride missing. Guests vanished. Groom in shock. Reporters gathered by the church gates, their cameras flashing like lightning. Ethan didn't answer a single question. That night, sitting in the police station, Ethan's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He replayed every second in his head. Clara's whisper, Daniel's shadow, the blue flames. None of it made sense. And yet, deep down, he knew this wasn't over. A detective walked in, setting down a small evidence bag on the table. Inside was a burnt piece of paper, something they found near the altar. "Does this belong to you?" he asked. Ethan leaned closer. His heart stopped. The charred paper had faint handwriting still visible. "She'll never leave me again." It wasn't Clara's writing. It was Daniel's. Ethan's breath came fast. "Where did you find that?" The detective said. "On the floor near a scorch mark shaped like a handprint. There's no explanation for it. No accelerant, no fire source, just heat." Ethan's head dropped into his hands. "He's not gone," he whispered. "He's still here." That night, when the station finally released him, Ethan didn't go home. He drove straight to the old lake house again, the one burned 3 years ago. Moonlight flickered through the broken windows as he stepped inside, flashlight trembling. The air smelled of smoke and rain. The walls, blackened and crumbling, seemed to pulse with memories. He could almost hear Clara's laughter from before everything went wrong. Before that night, then a soft sound, a piano note, one single lonely key echoing from upstairs. Ethan froze. There was no piano in that house. Not anymore. He followed the sound up the stairs. Every step creaked like a whisper. The melody grew louder, sadder. The same tune Clara used to hum when she couldn't speak. At the top, the door to the old bedroom was open just slightly. Candlelight flickered inside. Ethan pushed it gently. Clara sat at the broken piano, her back to him, white dress torn and dirty. Her fingers hovered above the keys, trembling. "Clara!" Ethan's voice cracked. "You're alive!" She didn't turn around. Her voice, low, quiet, filled the room. "You shouldn't have come back." He stepped closer. "I had to find you. The police are—" She stopped playing. The silence stretched too long. Then she whispered, "They won't find him. He's part of this place now." Ethan frowned. "Who?" Slowly, she turned her head, and for the first time, Ethan saw her eyes up close in the candlelight. They weren't hers anymore. They were deep, empty, and familiar. Daniel's. A shiver crawled down Ethan's spine. Clara. Her lips curved into a faint, haunting smile. "You said you wouldn't let him take me again." Ethan's voice trembled. "What did he do to you?" She tilted her head. "He kept his promise. He said we'd never be apart. And now—" She stood, stepping closer, the light flickering wildly. "He's inside me." Ethan backed away, shaking his head. "No, that's not possible." But then, her voice changed, deeper, colder. The same voice he'd heard in the church. "Hello, little brother." Ethan stumbled back, horror flooding his veins. "Daniel." The candle blew out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, whispering right beside his ear, so close he could feel the breath, came Daniel's final words. "You promised her forever." Lightning struck outside. The whole house shuddered. Ethan fell against the wall, trying to turn the flashlight back on. But when it flickered to life, the room was empty. The piano was gone. The floorboards were clean. No Clara. No candle, no trace of anyone, just the faint sound of the wind, carrying a soft tune through the cracks of the house, Clara's lullaby. And on the wall, written in ash, were 3 chilling words: "The wedding's not over." Ethan collapsed to his knees, whispering, "What do you want from me?" And from somewhere in the darkness came the answer. Clara's voice, soft, broken, but echoing with Daniel's tone underneath. A second vow. The storm raged outside as Ethan stumbled out of the lake house, soaked and shivering, his mind spinning in a blur of terror. A second vow. Those words wouldn't leave his head. He drove through the rain like a man possessed, headlights cutting through fog, heart pounding so loud he could barely breathe. Every time he blinked, he saw her face, Clara's face, with Daniel's eyes staring back at him. He stopped the car halfway down the mountain road, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The truth was clawing its way out of the dark corners of his mind. The wedding wasn't cursed. It wasn't haunted. It was payback for a promise broken long ago, 3 years ago, the night of the fire. Ethan remembered the laughter, the whiskey, the music echoing through the lake house walls. Daniel had been drunk, jealous, angry that Clara loved Ethan more. "You stole her," Daniel had slurred. "You always take what's mine." They fought. Words turned into shoves, shoves into fists. Then Clara screamed. A candle fell. Curtains caught fire. Smoke filled the room. Ethan tried to pull Clara out, but Daniel had grabbed her wrist, refusing to let go. "If I can't have her," he'd said, "neither can you." Ethan's voice broke through the memory. "No, stop." He had swung a heavy bottle to break Daniel's grip, but when Daniel fell, his head hit the edge of the fireplace. And then silence. The flames swallowed everything. Clara's scream echoed through the burning house. Ethan had dragged her out, barely conscious. Her throat burned from smoke. When she woke up in the hospital, She couldn't speak. The doctor said her vocal cords were damaged. Ethan told her Daniel died in the fire, but that wasn't the whole truth. He buried what was left of Daniel and the guilt deep under the ruins of that house. Now standing in the rain, Ethan finally understood. Clara's silence wasn't just trauma, it was guilt. She remembered what really happened, and Daniel, he had never left. Ethan drove back to town, desperate to find answers. He broke into the old church again, searching for anything that could explain what Daniel wanted. The floor where the scorch mark had been was now cold, but there, beneath the altar, he found a small blackened box. Inside, a half-burnt piece of paper, their wedding vows, but someone had rewritten Ethan's name beside Clara's and crossed it out. Underneath, in Daniel's handwriting, were the words, "A vow broken must be made again." Suddenly, the church lights flickered on. Even though there was no power, the organ began to play softly, the same haunting melody Clara used to hum. The doors creaked open, and there she was, Clara, standing in the doorway, wearing her burnt wedding dress, veil torn, her eyes hollow. The wind didn't touch her. Her feet didn't leave prints on the dusty floor. She smiled faintly. "He's waiting," she whispered. "We have to finish what you started." Ethan's voice trembled. "No, Clara, this isn't you." But her tone shifted again, low, mocking. Daniel's voice. "You left me burning, brother. You took her. You lied. Now you'll say the words right." The candles around the church flared blue again. Ethan stumbled back toward the altar as Clara stepped closer, her face flickering between hers and Daniel's. "Repeat after me," the voice demanded. "Till death do us part." Again, Ethan screamed, "No!" The floor beneath him cracked open, flames licking through the gaps. Smoke filled the room. Daniel's shadow crawled across the walls, wrapping around Clara's body like a living chain. Her eyes pleaded through the haze. "Help me." Ethan dropped to his knees, sobbing. "Daniel, please, let her go. Take me instead." The voice laughed, a sound that shook the walls. "You already did." The fire surged higher. Ethan felt his body go weak. Through the smoke, he reached for Clara's hand, and for the briefest moment she smiled again. The real Clara. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Break the vow," she whispered. "End it." Ethan took a deep breath and tore the vow paper in half. The fire exploded in a blinding flash. When he opened his eyes, it was morning. The church was nothing but ashes. No Clara, no Daniel, just him, alive, lying in the ruins, clutching the torn vows in his hand. But when he looked closer, the ink had changed. Now it said, "One vow remains," and from somewhere beneath the ashes came the faint sound of a piano playing their wedding song. The morning air was thick with smoke and sorrow. The church was gone, reduced to ashes, yet the haunting melody of Clara's piano still echoed faintly in the distance, as if the fire had failed to burn it away. Ethan sat among the ruins, his fingers trembling as he stared at the torn vow in his hands. The ink shimmered faintly under the pale sunlight. "One vow remains," he whispered to himself. "What vow? What do you still want from me?" But deep down, he already knew. The second vow was to bind him to Clara, and the third was to bind them both to Daniel. Ethan stumbled to his car and drove to the one place he swore never to return, the cemetery on the edge of town. Daniel's grave was supposed to be there, hidden under an unmarked stone, but when he reached it, his breath froze in his chest. The grave was open, the coffin empty, the soil freshly disturbed. He fell to his knees, hands sinking into the wet dirt. "No, no, no," he cried. His voice echoed across the empty field. Then, from the trees came the faint whisper of Clara's lullaby, carried by the wind. "Clara!" he called out, his voice trembling. She appeared slowly from the fog, barefoot, pale, her dress still torn, but this time her eyes were calm, too calm. "It's over, Ethan," she whispered. "He wants peace." Ethan shook his head. "No, Daniel doesn't want peace. He wants me." She smiled sadly. "Then give him what he wants." Before Ethan could speak, she held up the torn piece of paper, the vow. But now it was whole again. The ink had rearranged itself, words rewriting across the page in black, burning letters. "Till the truth is spoken, the vow remains." Ethan froze. The truth, that was it. That was the only thing he'd never said. Not to Clara. Not to anyone. His voice broke. "Clara, I killed him. I didn't mean to, but I did. I lied to you. I buried him. And I thought if I loved you enough, the guilt would die too. But it didn't." Clara's expression softened. For the first time in years, her eyes filled with tears. "You should have told me," she whispered. The ground beneath them began to shake. The fog thickened, curling into shapes. Faces, hands, shadows. From the open grave, Daniel's figure began to rise, his suit charred, his eyes black and hollow. "You said you'd love her forever," he hissed. "And forever doesn't end with death." Ethan stood, shielding Clara behind him. "It ends now." Daniel's voice boomed like thunder. "Then choose, brother, her soul or yours." Ethan looked at Clara, trembling, broken, tears glistening on her face. "I won't lose you again," he whispered. Daniel smirked. then join her. The sky split open with a flash of lightning. Fire erupted from the grave, circling them both. Clara screamed, clutching her throat. Ethan grabbed her shoulders, shouting over the roaring wind. "Clara, say it! Say the vow! End it!" She shook her head, sobbing. "I can't!" Ethan took her face in his hands. "You can! It was our promise, not his." For a moment she looked into his eyes, and then, for the first time in 3 years, Clara spoke. Her voice was raw, trembling, but real. "I release you, Daniel." The fire around them exploded upward. Daniel screamed, a sound that shook the air, as his body began to fade, his shadow unraveling into smoke. Ethan felt the heat sear his skin, but he held on to Clara, refusing to let go. Daniel's final words echoed through the flames. "You can't break what's already bound." Then silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, the fire was gone. The grave was closed. The fog had lifted. Clara was in his arms, breathing softly. Her voice, still weak but alive, whispered, "It's over." He smiled faintly. "It's over." They stood there in the quiet morning, holding each other as the first light touched the ruined cemetery. For the first time in years, there was peace. But as Ethan turned to leave, something caught his eye. The vow paper lying on the ground. It was blank now, except for one faint line written in red. "A vow broken is a vow waiting to return." And far in the distance, from the empty lake house, a single piano note echoed once more. Weeks passed since that night in the graveyard. The town slowly forgot the fire, the whispers, and the tragedy of the two brothers and the girl who never spoke. But Ethan and Clara couldn't forget, because silence had returned, and silence had never meant peace. They moved away from the old town, settling in a small cottage by the sea. Clara's voice had come back, though faint and delicate, like the sound of wind chimes in an empty hallway. Sometimes she'd hum softly while watching the waves, the same melody she once played on that cursed piano. Ethan would smile, pretending not to notice that every note still sent a chill down his spine. One night, the ocean was eerily still. The moon hung low and red over the water. Clara was asleep beside him when Ethan woke to a sound, one soft piano note drifting through the night air. It was distant, but clear, too clear. He stepped outside. The wind was cold, the world quiet. Yet again, plink, that same haunting note. It came from somewhere beyond the cliff, from the sea itself. Ethan followed the sound until he reached the edge, staring into the black water below. The waves shimmered faintly, reflecting the moonlight like glass. And then he saw it, under the surface, the shape of a grand piano slowly rising from the deep. His breath caught. He stumbled back, whispering, "No, it can't be." The piano emerged completely now, dripping with water, its keys glistening like teeth. Sitting before it was Daniel, pale, soaked, and smiling. His voice was calm this time. "You broke the vow, brother, but you forgot the promise." Ethan's heart pounded. "I ended it. I freed you." Daniel shook his head. "You freed her, not me." Suddenly, behind Ethan, Clara's voice echoed softly, but not from the cottage. From the sea. He turned. She was standing next to Daniel, her white dress flowing beneath the water. Her eyes were peaceful. Too peaceful. "It's okay, Ethan," she whispered. "He's waiting for you." Ethan's chest tightened. "No, Clara, you're here. You're alive. I buried that nightmare." Daniel pressed a key on the piano, a single haunting note that made the waves ripple violently. "Then why do you still hear the song?" Ethan fell to his knees. The air grew colder, the sea turning blacker. Clara reached her hand out toward him. "It's time to finish it." Tears burned his eyes. "I can't lose you again." "You won't," she said softly. "You'll just understand." The water began to rise, swallowing the cliffside, pulling Ethan toward them. He tried to fight it, but the current was too strong. As the ocean consumed him, the melody grew louder, wrapping around him like chains. For a moment, everything went silent. When the sun rose the next morning, the cottage was empty. No footprints, no sign of struggle, only a single sheet of paper pinned to the wall, written in a familiar hand. "A vow broken is a vow waiting to return." Below it, a faint line in smeared ink. "Play the song again when love feels too quiet." Years later, locals still whisper about the sea near that cliff. They say that sometimes on cold nights, if you stand there long enough, you can hear a piano playing beneath the waves. A duet, two lovers, one promise, one endless silence. Till the truth is spoken, the vow remains.